After today, you don't even gotta see my face ever again. Look, the machine is ready to go as soon as I say go. After that, I'm basically...
a ghost.
Yeah, a ghost. Come on, we family for life. Submit the details, and I'll be there. I'm on my way.
The end of an era, the end of Power Book 2 Ghost, and the end of a few characters. I'm not too sure about you guys, but it definitely had the feeling of it being the end of the chapter, but not the full story. Book 2 Ghost felt like more of a Tejada story, where Tariq's journey begins now, where he joins none other than Tommy Egan. And we are definitely going to discuss that in a bit more detail throughout this breakdown, as Tariq St. Patrick got the call in an after-end credit scene. I always believed that Tariq would find his way to Chicago, and now the waiting game begins for Tariq, and maybe even a few others to join the crossover to Chicago. But we are going to get into all of that in this breakdown for episode 10, the final episode of Book 2 Ghost, Ghost in the Machine. As usual, in this recap and breakdown, which was written by Ashley Victoria Hudson, we're going to focus on all the major talking points, looking at a bunch of clues, Easter eggs, along with a theory or two in regards to what could potentially be coming next in the world of Power post season 4 of Ghost, especially with that after-end credit scene. We'll be focusing on the theme of leverage, chess moves, and how Tariq has in essence become the biggest drug dealer in New York City, but also what could be in store for him next with Tommy Egan.
Your father tried to ride one out between two worlds. That's what fucked him up. If you want to survive, you're either a civilian or a gangster. There ain't no in between. Stay in your lane, all in or all out. If you get distracted, you did.
When I was your age, I thought it was the right thing to do. My father tried to get me to turn my back on the streets. I didn't listen. I don't want you to make the same mistake, son. Okay? I'm trying to protect you, man. I'm trying to protect you from a life of misery, son. You could become the son, the man that I know you can be.
So you really did kill your father?
He might not be here no more, but ghosts never die.
Now, episode 10 kicks off with Monet's body being dragged out, as the Tejada kids watch on. At the end of 409, Monet did what she had to do and sacrificed herself to save her son, and of course, the kids were always going to be distraught. Despite what they've been through, despite the hurt, lies, manipulation, control, and betrayal, in season 4, they have overcome a lot of hurdles. There was a lot of self-reflection, especially on Monet's part.
How much you ma?
So, these kids were always going to feel this death. When they came back to the Tejada house, they realized they've now lost both the king and the queen. However, the blame game started pretty much straight away. Kane said every time they leave him out of a plan, it always gets fucked up. On the other hand, Drew threw the blame in Kane's direction and said he was the one to blame. So, as expected, emotions were kind of all over the place at this moment in time, because they were still kind of trying to make sense of everything that had just happened. Everything was kind of fresh and raw. They had to take a breather, take a step back, and just come together as a family. They had to finish what they started, and they had to make sure they were on the same page going forward, which they kind of were and kind of weren't at the same time, but we're definitely going to get into that in a bit more detail. Now, over at the warehouse, we still had Tariq holding Detective Carter captive, but they couldn't do anything with Carter because he still had the CCTV footage of Tariq and Braden killing Zion. They were also holding an NYPD officer who was held in the highest of regards, at least by the police force, and if he went missing, the NYPD would have burned the city to the ground to try and find him. But this is where Tariq got the call from Davis McLean. Davis gave him the news on Monet's death, and Tariq definitely felt this death too. Maybe not as much as the Tejadas, but Monet and Tariq kind of had this level of respect for each other. They started season 1 of Ghost working together, and they were always kind of straight up with each other too. Whenever Monet had a problem, she wouldn't beat around the bush, she'd always confront Tariq to his face, not behind his back. And I also felt like Tariq felt as if Monet also had this level of respect for him as well. She always used to go to Tariq for the plan because he was her thinker. But Davis also gave some advice to Tariq. There was no way a cop that dirty doesn't have skeletons in his closet, and he was right. Tariq just needed to dig deeper.
I say keeping that heart rate down. Keeping your breathing nice and slow. Oh, you're a good fucking liar. This is gonna be fun.
Now, Carter is an officer who knows a lot about human psychology. He knows how to really get under your skin, how to target your weakness. He sees certain things that not the average person wouldn't. And in this situation, that was his chess move. His move was to try and get under Tariq's skin as much as possible, to try and confuse him even more than he already was. He targeted Tariq's character, his future, and the fact that he also lost his unborn baby, which definitely hit a nerve. But it was the right move from Carter, just caused more panic, confusion, and more problems where Tariq isn't able to think. Now, while Tariq was with Carter and the Tejadas were coming up with their plan, Effie and Brayden were in Carter's house trying to get access to the CCTV footage, but it was also made clear what Tariq could kind of use to get under Carter's skin.
So I shouldn't be home too late tonight. You wait up for me, yeah?
Way back in 401 and 405, we learned that Carter was someone who never really got over the death of his wife, Denise. He went straight back to work with the NYPD. He also still has her clothes, and everything set up in his house as if Denise still kind of lives there with him. Back in 405, I also touched on how he had 2 sets of plates, 2 sets of knives and forks laid out on the table, as if Denise was still alive, and we're going to come back around to that in just a moment. But in regards to the CCTV, they weren't able to delete this from Carter's laptop. They had to get onto the NYPD database at the precinct. However, they did find something unusual, the fact that Carter kept accessing this file on Kamal Tate's death, a death which he signed off on. It didn't make sense, and so that was a lead that Tariq needed. Now over at the warehouse, it was Tariq's turn to get under Carter's skin. Just like Carter did earlier, this time it was Tariq hitting Carter's nerve by talking about his wife Denise. And after he kind of ruffled some feathers where Carter was unable to think, he then moved the subject on to Kamal Tate. One minute he was on his task force working with Carter, and the next minute he was gone. The minute Tariq got the call from Brayden, and he got the information, he definitely knew, especially because he's seen at first hand how Carter was willing to clean up the murder of Felicia Lewis. Why wouldn't he do the same thing with Kamal Tate? And well, all it took was Tariq to look into Carter's eyes to know he was the one who killed Kamal Tate. It was like a role reversal from 402, but also because it takes a liar to know a liar. Now Tariq also knew he had the perfect ammunition because of whose brother Carter killed. It was Rashad Tate, one of the most powerful men in New York, which is when I thought Rashad Tate could potentially come back into the picture. But again, we're definitely going to get to that later on, especially with Nico Halston. But he got the ammunition, he just needed to execute the plan, and also make sure the CCTV footage of him killing Zion was definitely dealt with. He couldn't afford to leave any loose ends. Now over at Noma's mansion, we had Noma and her brother who were on complete different wavelengths. On one hand, you had the Tejadas who had become a lot closer because of their mother's death. Brayden, Effie and Tariq were also working together. But on the other hand, you had Noma and her brother who were on complete different pages. However, he said Noma is destroying everything their family built and he was done playing games in the States, which he was never too fond of in the first place. In fact, it all seemed like way too much of a coincidence. First Lombardi in Milan, and now this in New York. The common denominator in all the chaos was Noma, so it was time to move on. This is also where she was finally confronted by Anya Covington.
Your dad was a drug trafficker, Anya. Yeah. I didn't know that's what he was into when I met him.
Anya knew from the last conversation, Noma wasn't telling the full truth. Noma said that her father died because he was a drug dealer, and now they had to protect themselves because of her father's mistakes. But in the heat of the moment, Noma also said that her father died because he got in the way. Something we have seen and heard before in the world of power. When people are in the way of anybody else's future, we know what happens. But this time, Anya wasn't buying it from Noma. Now, from one mother to another, Kane was here in Monet's bedroom, just taking a sniff of her mother's favourite fragrance. Everybody has a go-to fragrance and a distinct smell, and when you enter the room of a loved one that's just passed away, you can definitely smell them. You can still kind of feel their presence. When Lorenzo died, Kane was definitely hurt because they just about patched things up, and Kane was just beginning to come to Lorenzo's way of thinking in terms of being family first. But this death definitely hit Kane different.
What am I to you? Huh? Your soul's like your fucking son.
You're a good son, Kane.
You mean you never say that shit? Say that again. I need to hear that.
Now, Woody McLean has confirmed in an interview Kane was basically touched when he was a child, and the only person that was there for him was his mother. When he really needed someone, Monet was by his side. But that's also another reason why they had to get revenge. Kane led the charge, as him, Drew, Diana, and Bronze hit the location where they thought Noma was gonna be. Kane took the lead as they wiped out a few of Noma's men, but they didn't find Noma, they found Anya Covington. And this is what I was referring to over the past week, which also ties into one of the themes of this breakdown, leverage. The one way they could target Noma was through Anya Covington. So, as leverage was the name of the game in episode 10, with Davis McLean's help, Tariq managed to get the evidence that Carter was indeed behind Kamal Tate's death. The ballistics reports on the bullets match Kane's previous shootings that he was involved in, which really was a rookie mistake from someone of Carter's caliber to make. If you're going to use a gun, make sure that it's only tied to that specific crime. But that was Carter's mistake, and now Tariq was the one who was in control. That was as long as the Zion video never saw the light of day, neither would the evidence that Tariq had. But this was always going to be a short-term respite. Now this is where they came together with the Tejadas. The Tejadas were holding Anya Covington, but they needed Tariq to come up with a plan, because if Monet was here, who would she go to at this moment in time? The answer is Tariq.
I know your big brain got a plan, so let's hear it.
Monet always used to go to a thinker, the man with the brains, but it was always going to be a favour for a favour. It always is with Tariq St. Patrick, something he learned from Rashad Tate. Tariq knew that he could get Anya to talk, but Tariq needed someone to get onto the NYPD database and delete the video of him killing Zion. That was crucial. He really needed to make sure that evidence was completely gone. And the man to get that done, like he pretty much has been doing across season 4, he's been the man to get shit done, was Drew Tejada. Now Tariq's plan with Anya was pretty simple. He needed to make it look like he had nothing to do with the Tejada kidnapping. Tariq needed to build some level of trust with Anya to get her to talk and find Noma's location. And the only way to do that was to kind of help and make her think he had nothing to do with her kidnapping. So this was all a fake setup. And even Kane coming out to run after them, his bullets weren't aimed at the car. This also kind of mirrored what we saw in season 2 at the basketball court with Mecca, Zeke and Monet. He set this whole drive-by situation where he made it look like it could have been Lorenzo, but who was there to protect them in a time of need? It was Mecca. It was all a setup. So that's just a small parallel back to Mecca's move in season 2. But now that Tariq had some level of trust with Anya Covington, they began to talk about the history and their past. And you have to say, both of them do have a lot in common. They both had drug dealers for parents, both of them had been lied to, but ironically, Tariq said something that Tasha told him in 407. They don't have to let their parents dictate who they are and who they become. They can be better than their parents, which is quite ironic, considering Tariq still wants to be a drug dealer, when that's the complete opposite of what Ghost was trying to be, and what he was trying to protect Tariq from. Ghost didn't want this life of misery for Tariq, which is why I played that certain clip at the beginning of this breakdown, and we will get into that when we have this conversation with Tasha. Now on the other side of New York, we had Drew carrying out his part of the plan, all while Carter was downstairs trying to clean up his evidence. He was taking out the bullets that matched anything to do with Kamal Tate's murder, but as Nico Halston walked in, he definitely knew, and that's how I assume Braden had the bullet later on. It was thanks to Detective Nico Halston. He's someone who always questioned Carter on the death of Kamal Tate. Even though he wasn't fond of Tate himself, he knows there's a certain code they abide to, and getting rid of cops, that's not what they do. So, as he was looking on at Tate's evidence box, we knew what he was thinking. He was thinking about flipping on Detective Carter. Now with Drew, Carter told him that they're good and he'll get Noma, but first, he wanted Tariq St. Patrick. Now with Anya and Tariq, as he approached Noma's location, I did have a funny feeling that Anya could get caught in the crossfire. It is a point I raised earlier in the week, because we always have to look for civilians being caught because of the actions of others, and this was an eye for an eye. Diana basically said, "You took our mother away, so I'm gonna take your daughter." It was brutal, which in my opinion, Diana shouldn't have done. Even Kane's reaction was like, "Diana, what the fuck?" Their target was Noma and Anya was an innocent civilian. She didn't do anything to harm the Tejadas, or even know about this drug world until fairly recently. So, I do think it was quite unfair on Anya, but at the same time, in the world of power, these things can definitely happen. Now Tariq was rightfully pissed. The plan was to get Noma. They had a location and all they had to do was bide their time. Just be a little patient. Let Noma come out into a vulnerable position before they take the shot. Diana definitely jumped the gun when they had the advantage, although she was right about one thing. Now that Noma would want revenge, she wasn't going to go anywhere. With Drew, I did kind of wonder what his move would be, because he has set Tariq up before. The betrayal that we saw at the end of season 3 did make me think, could Drew double cross him once again? But this time he was straight with Tariq, because both of their goals were the same. The Tejadas and Tariq had to get rid of Carter and Noma. Now first, Tariq wanted a meeting with Detective Nico Halston, which is where I assume he would have given him the details on Carter killing Kamal Tate, because he was the one who told Carter Drew came through. But he was saving the final shot for Detective Carter. But again, this was all a setup, because Detective Nico Halston wasn't on the plan with Tariq. They just needed Carter to confirm exactly what he did, so Nico could hear it for himself. Now on to the double bluff. As they held Carter at gunpoint, they told him that all he had to do was pin the murder of Kamalte on Nico Halston, and all this would go away. Carter had no choice. He had to slap the handcuffs on Nico for a murder that he committed, which he definitely agreed to. The ironic thing is that Nico Halston had the chance to flip on Carter before, but he didn't. He said that they go way back, they were brothers, they had a code and they stuck to it. Or, at least he stuck to, not Carter. And Nico Halston would have done anything to have his back, he was his brother. He also lied to him about Felicia Lewis. So, all of Carter's skeletons were now coming out of the closet, which gave enough Nico to flip on his boss and slap the handcuffs on his wrist. And again, it is a point I raised earlier in the week. What would be a worse outcome for someone like Detective Carter? I said prison, simply because a cop in prison is absolute torture, and that's a fate worse than death for someone like Detective Carter. Now with Carter out the way, the next move was a flight plan. Whenever they booked a private jet, Noma would get a notification directly to her phone, and that's how they were going to lure Noma into the hangar. Now with Noma and her brother was taking all her men and the business out the States, because Noma cost them way too much. Before they entered this war, they outnumbered the Tejadas 10-1, but now it was down to 5-1. So he'd seen enough. He made the call to end this chaos. However, we knew there was no way Noma would let this go, especially after what happened to Anya. Now over at the hangar, the Tejadas had a really touching moment, which kind of felt like a farewell speech from Kane Tejada. They were reminiscing about moments with Monet when they were younger, as you do when you lose loved ones. But he was also laying down a marker and showing he was always going to be family first. He was going to do what needed to be done, especially when law enforcement arrived, which is also a callback to earlier in season 1, when him and Drew were trapped by law enforcement. After dealing with Lil Guap and the GTG, he was going to do what needed to be done, not Drew.
Can't win fucking cop, man. You ain't, I am.
In essence, this was very similar. As Drew and Diana got handcuffed, Kane popped out from behind Noma, just like Mecca would do to him in season 2, and Noma definitely had it coming. They couldn't end season 4 without Noma being taken off the chessboard. However, what followed was a shootout between Kane and law enforcement, where Kane was struck multiple times. But how he managed to escape and just disappear, like a ghost, especially when the place was full of law enforcement, I think this is one which you just gotta ride with, and I guess not think too deep into it. So, moving on. As the dust settled, we saw the return of Jenny Sullivan and Blanca Rodriguez. Davis and Paula Tanaka was here to represent Drew and Diana, but also serve Noma on a silver platter as a criminal who was behind the entire drug network, someone who they weren't able to get in season 3. But Davis also wanted his law license back, which was reinstated. And with his law license being reinstated, I do wonder if he'll cross over at some point and kind of be this lawyer to Tommy and Tariq in the future, because I do kind of think they're missing a Joe Proctor character in Force. But in the world of power, we always say nobody ever gets a happy ending or a win, but I do guess this is kind of a win for Davis McLean. Now, it also wouldn't be Jenny Sullivan or Blanca Rodriguez if they didn't try and get Tariq St. Patrick. They're obsessed with catching a St. Patrick, but as usual, they had nothing. But they also asked about Kane Tejada, whose current whereabouts were unknown. Kane was a wanted man because of what happened with Noma, and also the shootout with law enforcement. He was trying to lay low at a motel where Effie came to help. Effie dropped a bag of money which was for her co-term program at Stanford, but she was willing to give it to Kane for him to escape. She was willing to sacrifice everything she'd worked so hard for, if it meant Kane would survive and escape, because being on the run, it costs a hell of a lot of money. You're gonna have to bribe people, paying for shit is gonna be more expensive, staying under the radar is also expensive, it's gonna cost you hell of a lot. Whether Kane is someone who could potentially cross over to Chicago, let's wait and see. I can potentially actually see it happening. Kane, Tariq and Braden coming to the rescue in regards to whatever Tommy's got himself into in Chicago. Let's wait and see. I think they could definitely do with a shooter like Kane. But with Drew, he was packing his bags. He wasn't going to let Monet's death go to waste by them just getting back into the game, rebuilding the family business, just for them to be in the same position over and over again. He was going to go pursue his art fellowship that he was offered in Paris. And to be honest, Diana's proposal was quite silly, after her not wanting to be in the game in the first instance, after losing Lorenzo, Monet, seeing what Kane did just to protect them, losing her baby, and being left all alone in this house. she still wanted to get back doing the one thing that destroyed this family. But what I would say is, good luck to Diana, because I still feel as if she should have got what was coming to her for her betrayal at the end of season 3. Now with Tasha, there hasn't gone a season finale of Ghosts where we haven't seen Tasha St. Patrick, and I did raise that point earlier in the week, so I was definitely expecting her to show up. Tariq told Tasha that she can finally come out of WITSEC, she can have Yasmin go to a good school, and she can live her life. But it can't be in New York, because he was still going to remain in the game. So, just like I said with Diana, after everything that he's been through, after everything that he's seen and lost, Tariq still wants to remain in the game.
If you want to survive, you're either a civilian or a gangster. There ain't no in between. Stay in your lane, all in or all out.
At least he's made a decision, just like Tommy said. You're either a civilian or a gangster, there ain't no in between, and Tariq does seem to have chosen his path. Now I really did also find it quite ironic they literally went full round in circle with Power Book 2 Ghost. They kind of started with Brayden, Effie and Tariq, and they ended with them back working together. Effie was going to run Course Correct, and Brayden was going to run the Fight Club, literally round in one circle, although there were a few kind of small differences. Obviously Brayden was going to run the Fight Club, but they weren't also going to be working as partners, they were going to answer to Tariq. Tariq wanted to be the boss, and in essence, the biggest drug dealer in New York, and now that there was a power vacuum, he has a chance. He made China do a proposal because he had a network ready to move the product. He's got law enforcement in his back pocket. Davis McLean also has his law license back. If he needed the help of Rashad Tate and his influence, I guess he could always approach Tate. So, in essence, Ghost in the machine.
Come on, we family for life. Send me the details, and I'll be there. I'm on my way.
Now that wasn't quite the end of Power Book 2 Ghost. There was an end credit scene where Tariq received a call. We didn't hear who was on the other end, but we can only assume it was Tommy Egan. It seems like Tommy's in hot bother over in Chicago with a particular crew and he needs backup. So, he's called his nephew over in New York, who basically said, if they want the smoke, they'll give it to them. So, all eyes are now on for season 3, as we wait in anticipation for maybe not just Tariq to show up in Chicago, maybe Kane, Brayden, Effie, maybe Diana, and if they need a lawyer, Davis McLean. I would be quite interested to see how kind of a link up between Tommy and Davis McLean would look like, because like I said before, I do think they're kind of missing a Joe Proctor type in Force, but maybe something that's kind of set up for the next Power show. But if Tommy is in trouble and he needs help, I do think he might just need more than just Tariq St. Patrick. So, I do think more could be joining Tariq, as he heads off to Chicago for Force Season 3, and we're definitely going to talk about that in a bit more detail over this coming week. But drop all your thoughts and predictions down below in the comment section for what you think a Tariq and Tommy link up is going to look like in Chicago. Why does Tommy need Tariq's help? And what do you think overall of episode 10? What do you think of season 4 as a whole? Drop all your thoughts down below in the comment section, and as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.